One photo, one moment. But it left a mark on the world. As Charlotte turned 10, the image her mother took didn't fade away. Instead, it stayed in people's minds. They kept looking at it. It's not because it was perfect, but because it was real. It didn't need royal symbols to be powerful. It didn't need gold or crowns to tell a story. It just needed Charlotte smiling, calm, and completely herself. It reminded people of something important. Sometimes the softest voices speak. The loudest on that photo. Charlotte looked like any young girl, but the world knows her path won't be like others. One day she may hold titles, walk behind kings, or speak for a nation. But now she is learning the quiet strength that begins. In the heart of a child who feels free, Kate's photo wasn't just a picture of her daughter. It was a gift to the public. A small window into a royal world that often feels far away. And what people saw through that window gave them hope. Hope that Charlotte will grow up. Knowing love more than pressure, hope that she will know truth more than perfection, hope that she will carry both kindness and courage. Because she was allowed to feel both as a child. As people looked at the photo again and again, many shared how it made them feel. She looks like she knows who she is. This is what the future should look like. It's not just a birthday photo, it's a quiet promise. You weren't wrong. Charlotte may not know it yet, but she is part of something big. Her future will carry many eyes, many opinions, and many expectations. But because of moments like this, small, real, and full of love, she is building something even more important. Her sense of self. And Kate. She's doing what every mother hopes to do. Gentle hand, keeping the heavy world at a distance, and saying, grow at your own pace. Be who you are before you become what others expect. That is what made the photo so powerful. Not just the way Charlotte looked, but the way she was seen, not as a royal first, but as a girl. A girl with muddy shoes, wind in her hair, and sunlight. And her smile, and that truly is the future people dream of. A future where leaders don't forget their roots. Where royals stay close to the people. Where tradition walks side by side with tenderness. Charlotte's story is just beginning. There will be more photos, more public moments, more history to write. But something about this quiet picture, taken on a grassy hill by her mother, will always stay special. Because in that one frame, the world didn't just see who she is, they saw who she could become. And for the first time in a long time, people believed that maybe, just maybe, the future could be warm, strong, and full of heart. All because of a girl in a blue sweater. All because she smiled. It wasn't just her crown that sparkled, it was her memory. Queen Elizabeth II wasn't only the head of the British monarchy. She was also the silent guardian of some of the world's most famous jewels. Her tiaras weren't just shiny ornaments. They were filled with stories, secrets, and silent promises passed down through generations. Every stone held a history. Every design carried a meaning. Now that she was gone, the question on everyone's lips wasn't just about the throne, it was about the jewels. Who would own them now? The queen had worn many tiaras in her lifetime, but she had also chosen not to wear many. Some she loaned, some she guarded, and some she handed over quietly, without fanfare. Her choices weren't loud, but they were powerful. Each decision whispered something about love, duty, and trust. Now the world waited and watched not just for words, but for appearances. Who wore what would tell the real story? One of the first clues came from Catherine, the Princess of Wales. She had often worn the famous lover's knot tiara. It once belonged to Princess Diana. Pearls swung from it like tears. And its beauty was both graceful and bold, because Queen Elizabeth had worn it rarely. But when Catherine stepped into the spotlight, wearing it at a state banquet, it was clear. This tiara was now hers. Or at least, it belonged to her heart. It felt like the Queen was saying, "You are ready." But there was more to uncover, Camilla. Keen Consort had already worn many important pieces. The Delhi Durbar tiara, heavy and powerful, the Graceful honeycomb tiara with its sharp design, and the Tech Crescent tiara, delicate and flowing. All of them were once part of Queen Mary's private collection. Elizabeth had loaned them to Camilla when she married Charles. But the tiaras were never fully gifted. It was a quiet signal. The queen wanted them to stay in the royal bloodline, not leave through a different family tree. Then came the meander tiara. Not many people knew its full story. It once belonged to Princess Alice of Greece, Prince Philip's mother. It had a Greek key pattern and a diamond center in the shape of a wreath. It stood for triumph and peace. Princess Anne had worn it many times, though Elizabeth herself had never done so. In 2011, Zara Phillips Anne's daughter wore it at her wedding. Now, many believed it would be hers forever, not just as a royal jewel, but as a gift from grandmother to granddaughter. There were other stories, too. Princess Eugenie wore the striking emerald kokoshnik, its tiara, on her wedding day. Its deep green stone glowed under the lights. People had rarely seen it before. It was part of the queen's private collection, inherited from her mother. That day, Eugenie wore it with pride and grace. Some believed it was a wedding gift, sign of closeness. Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, had worn the aquamarine ribbon tiara. It had light blue stones set in ribbon like diamonds. Elizabeth had worn it during her Canada tour. Sophie was loyal, had stood by the queen through many quiet moments. If anyone deserved that tiara, it was her. But some pieces still remain mysteries. The fringe tiara, worn by Elizabeth on her wedding day in 1947, held a place of honor. It had snapped just hours before the ceremony, but was fixed in time. Later it was worn by Princess Anne, then Princess Beatrice. Would it now be passed to Princess Charlotte someday? People wondered. They watched. They waited. Queen Elizabeth's tiaras weren't just about beauty, they were about memory. She didn't speak often about them, but she showed their meaning through quiet action, through sharing. Those tiaras had new heads to rest upon, new stories to write, and the world was watching one sparkle at a time. Some jewels shine, but others speak. After Queen Elizabeth II's passing, royal watchers didn't just look at speeches or ceremonies, they studied the jewels. Each tiara that appeared on a royal head told its own story. Some said goodbye. Others said you're next. And many carried quiet messages the queen had left behind without saying a single word. She had worn crowns and diamonds through wars, weddings, and state visits. But her real talent was knowing who should wear them next. Those choices were slowly being revealed, not in the press, not in the courtroom, but in photographs, dinner halls, and bridal aisles, and the world watched in silence. When Catherine, the Princess of Wales, wore the lover's not tiara again, it wasn't just fashion, it was history returning. Once beloved by Princess Diana, the tiara had deep meaning. It was heavy with emotion, full of pearls and memories. Catherine wore it with grace, with strength, but also with softness. That softness made people feel the queen had chosen well, that the future of the crown would still have a heart. But that wasn't the only tiara bringing the past into the present. The Delhi Durbar tiara, filled with thick scrolls and sharp diamonds, had once been created for Queen Mary's rule in India. It looked like a crown from another world, grand and powerful. When Camilla wore it to a state dinner, some were surprised. But those who had followed the queen's quiet steps knew it wasn't unexpected. The queen had loaned this piece to Camilla long before. It was a sign of respect, but also a test that Camilla had now passed. Then came a soft surprise, a memory of love and simplicity. Zara Phillips, the daughter of Princess Anne, wore the meander tiara at her wedding. It had a Greek key pattern and a calm, thoughtful design. This tiara had never been worn by Queen Elizabeth, though it had belonged to her husband's mother. The queen had passed it to Princess Anne, and now it had reached Zara. It showed that not everything had to stay in the spotlight. Some pieces could stay close to the heart, pass quietly from woman to woman, from mother to daughter, but the sparkle didn't stop there. Princess Eugenie walked down the aisle in a deep green tiara, the emerald kokoshnik. It was bold, it was unexpected, and it was beautiful. The queen had kept that tiara hidden for years. It had come from her mother's collection. Few people had ever seen it in public. Yet on that wedding day, she gave it to Eugenie. And with that single moment, she gave her granddaughter a part of history that was strong, rare, and entirely hers. The Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie, had also received a special jewel. The aquamarine ribbon tiara, pale blue and shaped like flowing silk, it looked more like water than stone. Sophie had been by the Queen's side in both good days and hard ones. She had never demanded attention, she had stayed steady, and when she wore the ribbon tiara, it felt like the Queen was saying, "Thank you," still. Not every tiara had been seen again. Some remained in velvet boxes, inside vaults, guarded by silence. The Queen's will was never made public, and the palace shared few details. This added to the mystery. People didn't know which jewels were gifts, which were loans, and which were still waiting for the right moment, the right person. The fringed tiara, full of sharp diamonds, standing like spears, had a story of its own. It had broken right before Queen Elizabeth's wedding in 1947, and yet, she had still walked down the aisle with it on her head fixed just in time. That same tiara was later worn by her daughter Anne, and then by her granddaughter Beatrice. Would Princess Charlotte wear it one day? Many people hoped so. It was more than a tiara, it was a family thread. Behind all the glitter, something beautiful was happening. The tiaras weren't just moving from queen to princess. They were moving from one heart to another, from one generation to the next. From one woman who had lived through everything, to many who were just beginning their journey, and the Queen. She didn't need to speak. Her tiaras were telling the story for her. A crown may belong to one woman, but a tiara tells the story of many. As time moved on, and Queen Elizabeth II's absence grew more real, the royal family didn't say much. They kept quiet, as royals often do. But silence in the palace doesn't mean nothing is happening. It just means the messages are sent differently through moments, through choices. And through jewels, people still talked about the Queen's tiaras. Not because they were just pretty, but because they were full of meaning. Each time one appeared at an event, it felt like a door to the past had opened and the Queen was still speaking, still guiding, still watching from beyond. And her message was always clear. Family first. Tradition lives on. Princess Anne, her only daughter, had always been strong and steady. She didn't chase attention, but she had her own power, a quiet one. She wore the meander tiara with ease. Its Greek pattern reminded people of her father's roots. Her daughter, Zara Phillips, had worn it on her wedding day. The tiara had never touched Queen Elizabeth's head, yet it stayed close to her heart. It was part of her husband's story, and now it stayed within his bloodline. That was the Queen's way, personal and meaningful, even in silence. Then came the lotus flower tiara. This one had a soft story. Once a wedding gift from King George VI to his bride, the Queen Mother, it had been turned into a tiara. A lotus flower, made of diamonds, shaped like petals blooming in the moonlight. It had passed through gentle hands, first to Queen Elizabeth, then to Princess Margaret, then to Princess Margaret's daughter-in-law. And now, to Catherine wore it? It felt light, like spring, showed the softer side of the crown, the quiet grace, the warmth. Some jewels show strength, others show love. The lotus flower tiara was love, but there were others, hidden stories still unfolding. Queen Mary's fringed tiara had a life of its own. It was never just a headpiece, it was a symbol, a wedding crown, passed down like a torch. Elizabeth wore it at her wedding. It broke right before the ceremony, and the court jeweler fixed it just in time. Years later, Princess Anne wore it, then Beatrice. The pattern continued. People began to wonder, would Princess Charlotte wear it someday too? The Queen had likely thought of that. She always planned ahead. Even her jewels followed a path. It's not just for beauty, but for story, for memory. Then there was the Queen Mary's diamond bandeau. This one stayed hidden for many years. People almost forgot about it until Meghan Markle's wedding. Then it shone again. Simple, modern, yet deeply royal. Queen Elizabeth had never worn it in public, but she had kept it safe. And when Meghan needed something borrowed, something that said "you belong," the Queen chose that tiara. A gift? A loan? No one knew, but it was a sign. Meghan wasn't. just joining a family, she was joining history. The jewels knew how to speak. Even when people didn't, one jewel stood out for its color, the aquamarine ribbon tiara. Blue like the sea, soft like silk. It had traveled with the queen during her trips, especially to Canada. Later it sat on the head of Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. Sophie had always stayed close. During tough times, she was present, quiet but loyal. And in the end, the queen showed her love not in words, but in diamonds. And what about the queen's most secret wishes? No one could answer with full truth. Her will remained sealed. The law protected it. But eyes don't lie. And when a tiara appears where it hasn't been seen in decades, the world notices. The queen might not have spoken her plans, but her choices were still unfolding, tiara by tiara. Camilla, now queen consort, had worn many pieces. But people knew the queen had only loaned them. Why? Because Camilla was part of the family by marriage, not by blood. And the queen believed certain things should never leave the royal line. That's why those tiaras weren't gifted. They were trusted. There's a difference in this quiet sharing of jewels. Something beautiful was happening. The queen's love didn't end when she left this world. It lived on, shining on foreheads, sparkling in photographs, dancing in royal halls. Each tiara told a story. Each sparkle whispered her name.